Good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Eldon. With me is Dalton Grimes, and we've got a special treat for you tonight.
Yes, we do. Now, I would like to send this one out to everyone that has helped me get to this point today, including Dave Eldon.
I was going to say, wait, do we know anyone like that here?
Yeah. So, in the Magic community, and in the judging community in specific, you will find people that help you along the way. And these people,
and in life, too.
Yeah, in life. To you, they're NPCs, but they might also be called mentors. And so mentorship is an incredibly important process in the judge community because it's how we ensure that the standards of the program remain as high, as exceptional as we want them to be. And I don't mean that as exclusive. I mean that as in we want our standards to be high so that what we put back into the community is the best that it can be.
So let's start with like a simple question. We always like to start with the easy stuff and build our way up.
It's a nice little softball toss.
So what is mentorship? I like how you took a drink. Like
you gotta answer that one yourself.
Right as I took. Well, I guess you're taking a drink now. So
I'll just keep going.
Yeah, it's like the ventriloquism thing. Like I can like make the dummy talk while I'm drinking this water. Okay, no. So like mentorship.
Oh, you got this?
Well, I mean I can. Like I already had some stuff I like had thought about that I was going to talk about after you were done. But like you can. I was thinking you would go first. So.
Okay, so mentorship to me is the process of passing forth the information that you have worked to get onto other judges. This doesn't mean newer judges. This doesn't mean only your judges, the ones you take under your wing. This is all other judges. So that's to say that just because David and I are the same level of judge, just because we're both L2s, doesn't mean we can't each learn from each other. Doesn't mean we can't each help mentor the other to become a better judge.
Yeah. So for me, that's like what the real core of it is. The real core is taking something that you personally have, taking some skill that you have and transferring that to another judge. Developing a skill that you have in another judge. And that is a pretty broad topic, and of course that makes sense because it is a broad topic. Mm-hmm. But that's how I think of it. That's like kind of how I conceptualize it. So the next thing I guess would be, why is mentorship important?
So the judge program is, I would say, one heck of a program, given the fact that it is a voluntary program. It's not like something you apply for and get hired on. It's not something that pays the bills. Judging is something that you take up on your own, as is mentorship. If you don't have the free time or the desire to mentor another, then that's okay. It's part of the program. Part of being the best judge you can be is ensuring that you don't go beyond what you can handle. So when you have that ability to do so, when you have that ability to help teach others and to pass on what you know, then it's really important that we take up that opportunity to be able to put the program forward. If you don't do it, if David and I don't do it, then there's going to be no one to do it, which means that the program will just stagnate where it is and then cease to exist.
All right. So again, when I asked that question, I of course had some thoughts that I was going to talk about, and one of them is, do you know anyone who's ever quit Magic?
I do.
Yeah. Do you know anyone who's ever quit judging?
I do.
All right. So
they prefer retired.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can call it whatever you want, but that's the first point of why mentorship is important. Mm-hmm. Because the fact of the matter is that most people who play Magic eventually step away from the game or lessen their involvement in the game due to real life situations, or maybe they're not as interested, or maybe they've got something else that takes up their time now. Regardless of what the reasoning is, it happens to lots of people. And because of that, if you are one of the experienced people who's leaving the program, then that means that the collective amount of skill in the program goes down. And when that happens, if you don't want the amount of judge skill to really critically drop, then it's important for those people to pass on the stuff that they know in order to help the next generation of judges, the people who are getting into the program and getting more involved in the program, in order to help them keep the program at the same level of competency, at the same level of excellence that people come to expect from the program. So that's point number one. Point number two is, even if we somehow had some kind of magic wand that we could wave, and nobody is gonna want to leave the judge program anymore. So even if that problem goes away, there still is a really important need to improve new people and to improve the skills that people have. And if you don't have any mentorship, then that means that everybody's skills are staying at either the same level or the level that they can improve themselves with by self-study. And in general, mentorship is a faster and more efficient way to improve people's skills at basically any judge skill that you would want to name. So those two things, I think, is the two most important reasons, in my opinion, why mentorship is important to the program.
Yeah. So one thing that I like that you mentioned is that it helps to go above and beyond what is necessary.
Yes.
So as we know, there are certain standards that are required to be met to advance through the program. So for example, for level 1, you have to judge 2 events, you have to pass the test, you have to pass your review, and you have to agree to be held to the JCC. Those things are not necessary. Those things are not necessarily the responsibility of a mentor. Someone can go and do those things without anyone's assistance.
Yeah.
If I went onto the Wizards website and I picked up that book and I was like, okay, I'm going to go judge 2 events at my store, because you don't have to be a level 1 to judge F&M at regular. You know? Yeah, so anyone can go and do those things, and you will obviously have to find someone to take a test, but...
Yeah, I'll put the asterisk in there that when you do your 2 events, part of that is that there has to be a judge mentoring you while you're doing those events.
Yeah, so, however, that's not always...
You don't need somebody to help you do that.
There are different interpretations of what having a judge mentor is. And so... because of that, it could just be David was in the same room as me, and he saw that I didn't light the place on fire,
too, and he didn't screw it up too bad.
There were no judge calls, but David saw me do my 2 events, even though I didn't answer anything.
Yeah, he walked those results slips up to the score.
Yeah, I managed to put pairings up, and then I was done. And theoretically, that would meet the requirement. Sort of. But as a potential judge, I wouldn't be getting anything out of that.
Right.
I would need the assistance of someone to be able to debrief, to be able to talk over things that might have happened or things that could have come up, to actually allow myself that opportunity to learn. I'm not just putting out the information that I already took in, I'm actually improving on those skills and going forward.
Yeah. So that is... The second question. The third question that I want to talk about, and this is kind of real crux of the matter, is what does mentorship look like? Okay, so we talked about what it is. It's developing skills in another judge, and so that's kind of abstract. Let's kind of think of some concrete things that we could point to say this judge is mentoring this other judge.
Yep. So sometimes on applications or for reviews, people will ask you to list who your mentors in the program are. Basically, it's a way of providing a reference so that if they have questions about you as a potential candidate or a potential staff member for an event, they can look at those people that you worked with and get a better sense of who you are. They'll know that if I tested and got approved by Dave Eldon, that I'm probably going to have a pretty good knowledge of the rules, because that's something Dave is really good at himself, and he has a reputation in the program. So part of mentorship is being able to watch over someone and ensure that they progress in the areas that you value. And like I said, we'll definitely get to more. That's not the definition. But one example of that is when I go forward, when I progress as a judge, a big part of that is me continuing to sharpen my skills with the rules and with policy. And I would say that David is certainly one of my mentors in those regards. How? It's because he helps me to think through situations critically and to actually find out where in the documents that policy is or that rule that I need is. And he allows me, or rather forces me, to actually dive into those and read them. It's not just, oh, well, I heard a judge say this once and they were an L2, so it's true. This is where it says it in the MTR, so that's why I can use it. So that's one example of what mentorship might look like. It's having someone to be able to ask questions and to work forward with. Another possible example of mentorship is providing resources to others so that they may be able to sharpen their own skills or advance. What would that look like, David?
So lots of people have said that one really great resource. Oh man, I can't even plug my own channel with this straight face. So yeah, obviously there's lots of resources in the judge program to help you improve at whatever type of skill you're interested in. Of course, I'm not gonna let this opportunity to talk about how Judging for the Win is a great resource, but I'm not gonna let that one pass me by. But yeah, if you're interested in learning about rules and policy, I would definitely point someone to our blog or our YouTube channel. If you're interested in improving yourself in some other types of skills, then maybe you would talk about, for example, if you wanted to learn more about how WER works. There's stuff on the judge websites. There's presentations out there that you can look at how WER works. If you want to know anything about how to do investigations, there's people you can talk to at judge conferences who have investigations workshops. You could get pointed to some of those. If you're more experienced in the program, you're probably going to have more of an idea about what kind of stuff exists and what you can do with that stuff. If you are less experienced in the program, it can help to have someone who has that background to point you to those types of resources. And so those are some things that is that what you were thinking about when you said that?
Yeah, definitely. It can certainly take many different shapes. Another possible form of mentorship is the ability to work with someone else to progress together. And I know that might not seem as much like mentorship, because a lot of times when we think about it, we always think of someone who has a rank above you or a longer tenure than you in the program being able to coach someone forward. But that's not always necessary. Two of our friends that are also from the Fort Wayne dynasty, Patrick Cobley and Marco Sanchez, the way that they really got into judging and larger events was that Marcos made level 1, and then while he made level 1, he was studying with Patrick, and together they both progressed forward. Marcos hit level 1, and then Patrick hit level 1, and then they were both like, hey, we should go for L2. And then they kept studying together, and they would keep going to events, and then Marcos made level 2, and then Patrick made level 2. And that time together spent being able to bounce ideas back and forth, ask each other questions, and once again force another to come to a definitive conclusion is another great example of mentorship. If I ask David a question and David doesn't know the answer, but mine wasn't like a hypothetical question where I was going to tout the rules over him. Mine was, I actually wanted to know. Well, now we have to find it out because neither of us knows. And that mutual not knowing something has now turned into us learning something. So just because someone who you might think of as a mentor isn't a higher level than you doesn't mean they can't be a mentor to you.
Yeah. And in fact, that's one of the biggest misconceptions I think about mentorship. which is if you are a lower level, either judge level or experience level than somebody else, then that person could mentor you, but you wouldn't be able to mentor them. And the fact of the matter is that everybody has stuff that they're good at. Everybody has stuff that they could improve on, and it's very rare that that stuff is 100%. People aren't strictly better than other people. If you've got like a lightning bolt and a shock, nobody's going to play the shock in their deck if they have access to the lightning bolt. And people don't work that way. Mm-hmm. There's very, very little possibility for one person to be better than another person at every judge skill or every relevant type of interaction. It's just not possible. And so with that knowledge in mind, there's certainly something that you're good at, and there's certainly something that all of your judge idols are maybe interested in or curious about that you can help them out. And this is something, it might not be a big topic. It might be more of a niche kind of a thing, but that still counts as mentorship. Like it's not like I have to like really change the world here in order to be a mentor to somebody else. And so that's the sort of way that I want to kind of encourage everybody to think about, even if you're less experienced, is to think about what you're good at and think about how you can look for opportunities to improve those skills in other judges. Another thing is that I'm level 1, so I don't have to do any mentoring, or I shouldn't get to do any mentoring, which is like a even worse version of that.
Yeah, so
misconception, I think.
Yeah, with that misconception, only a level 2 judge can test a level 0 for their level 1 test, but that doesn't mean the level 2 judge has to be their mentor. So, for example, if David was a level 2 and I was a level 1 and I have a friend who wants to become a judge, I can go through that entire process of helping them learn the rules, helping set them up to take their test. I can't give it to them, but I can work with them.
You can get them to the point
practice
where they're
tests, get them to the point where they're going to pass it. Yes. That way they're not just blindly hoping that they do so. I can be there at events to give feedback. I can help set them up with a store and possibly vouch at my local shop to say, hey, just so you're aware, I have this person that's going to be with me. I'm going to let them handle the calls, and then I'll be here to make sure that if something goes wrong, then we get it fixed. Your event's not going to suffer, but it gives me that opportunity to help set them up in the community. Just because David's the one that's testing them and doing that interview doesn't mean that I can't have a hand in this.
Yeah. And that's very, very much the case. Like, for example, as a level 1, my rules knowledge was, probably better than a lot of people's, even though I was just a level 1. So, and that's something that we've definitely passed along in the Great Lakes region, and something that we have encouraged a lot of our judges to do, is, even if you're a level 1 judge, if you're someone who knows the rules really well, that doesn't mean that you can't help somebody else become a level 1 judge. And so that's good. Now, conversely, even as a level 2 who's done lots of GPs and lots of big events throughout my career, I have always leaned more towards the competitive side, which means that my experience judging at, for example, EDH games or Two-Headed Giant, it's something that I have never really took a really keen interest in.
But we did a whole episode on Two-Headed Giant.
Yeah,
it was great.
Turns out when you are good at the rules, you can talk about that. But yeah, so that's something I don't personally have a lot of experience with. So if you are a judge like that, then maybe you could be a mentor to me in that type of area. So that's like a kind of a concrete thing that illustrates the point we were talking about earlier, where you don't have to be really good at everything or really experienced overall to be a mentor to somebody. You can find something that you're specifically interested in and become specifically really good at that, and then you can look for opportunities to share that knowledge with other people.
Yeah, so a lot of times when we think about judging, we think about the rules of the game, and we think about the policies, such as game infractions or disqualifications or whatnot. But tournament logistics are something that is important for a judge to learn. Because if I expect to be going to, Star City game events or Grand Prix events or Magic Fest, then I should probably know how to run drafts. And I should probably know how pairings boards work. And I should probably know how much time is in build or how much time is in, this format or what I'm doing. If I don't know that, then I'm not going to be able to work those large events.
Yeah, I can help you out with that.
Yeah, definitely. Being able to assess a store and say, we're going to have this many people. We need to set up the tables in such a way that we're going to make sure that, each person is going to have a space, making sure that we can post the pairings somewhere that people will be able to access and doesn't crowd anyone. Those are all things that you can learn and teach to someone. Making sure that, you take into account, well, how do I put in a fixed seat in Were for someone who might have a mobility restriction? Being able to learn things like that is incredibly important and goes so far beyond rules and policy, but is incredibly critical when being able to run events.
So let's kind of think about the next question here, which is, let's say that I am a level 2 or a level 3 or even a level 1 who's looking at this presentation here.
But you are.
Okay, I guess that's true. Let's say I'm one of those judges, but I'm thinking to myself, it seems like a lot of work. Why would I want to do this?
Why would you?
Yeah, why would you want to do that?
So, beyond the reasons that we mentioned earlier that people will leave the program.
Okay, so step one, it's important that people do it.
Yeah.
But here's the problem with that. Just because it's important for somebody to do it, that doesn't mean I want to do it.
Yes.
Because, maybe, it's important for somebody to take out the garbage every night or every week. But,
doesn't mean you want to.
Somebody else could do that job, and then I wouldn't have to. So what about that? What would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, so what I would say is that, number one, and, being able to teach is a great way to learn, which might sound strange.
Oh, it's 100% true. Very,
but
very
it
much
is
the case.
Incredibly true every single time. That being able to pass knowledge forward and being comfortable and confident with your knowledge that you can pass it forward helps you to improve as a judge just as much as it's going to help them. Because if I am preparing a presentation for my friend who's going to become an L1 about how to run an event at their store, that's going to cause me to take some critical thinking as to what do I do that makes me run a good event at a store? How do I do opening announcements? How do I determine how many rounds are in an event? How do I handle calls? How do I address tables? How do I get attention? Being able to think about all these different steps just so that you can put it forward to someone else really helps. How often would you say a judge just goes up on stage for opening announcement and just wings it?
Most of the time.
Most of the time, but there are so many different things to remember. Why? Because they've done it so many times. They've prepared that so many times that they know what they're doing. If I was to go up on stage and run head announcements for, a Magic Fest event or an SCG Classic like David just did, then if I go up there now, there's probably going to be a few things I'm going to miss because I've never had that opportunity. But David, someone who's done it, someone who's been there multiple times, if he were to tell me the things I need to remember, that's going to help him remember so that when he goes up on stage, he might just be able to wing it.
Yeah.
So
another good example of that is like in the rules and policy, which is like very much the case for me. I would say that if I didn't spend so much time like writing articles and thinking about this stuff myself, I would probably be 70% of as good as I am right now at rules and policy. And I'm estimating that about 30% of my rules and policy knowledge comes from the fact that I do a bunch of articles and spend a lot of time talking with other people about it. And even though most of that time is spent explaining stuff to other people, it helps me understand it better because I have to think about how I'm going to explain it to people, and I have to understand it even more thoroughly to give that type of explanation.
What show was it we just did that you told me afterwards? You said, man, this is the most I've had to think about one of these.
Was it Last Known Information last week?
It might have been. Yeah, so just coming up with the questions for the episode.
It was great.
Provided us with a bunch of thought on, well, how do we explain these things? How do we try to come up with examples that are going to prove the points we need? So being able to critically think about what you need is important. I would also throw out that I find it pretty fun.
Okay. So point number 1 is it helps you be better too.
Yes.
Point number 2, why would I want to be a mentor for somebody? It's fun. And that's very much the case for some people, and for others not. But this is one of the things that I think is the magic of the Judge program. The breadth of opportunities you can have to do stuff in the Judge program is so high. Mm-hmm. And it's really, there were a lot of stuff in the Judge program that I've thought to myself, man, I would hate to have to do that. Mm-hmm. When I first wrote my first article, I actually, beforehand, I was like, man, writing articles seems like such a drag. I would really, you got to spend a lot of time, and you got to think about it a lot, and I'm not really that good at writing, and all this other kind of stuff. And it turns out that people are very poor in general at evaluating how much enjoyment they're going to get out of something. So even if mentorship doesn't seem like it would be really your cup of tea, I would encourage everybody to at least try it out, give it a good faith effort, because I personally think mentorship is one of the most satisfying experiences you can have as a judge. Many other judges agree, and even if you don't think it's for you, if you at least try it out, you can know for sure that it's not you, rather than going however long you go in the program without trying it and realize later on down the road that you're interested in.
Yeah, so the example I'll put out is that so far I have made 2 level 1s in my time as an L2. I'm hoping to make a 3rd here in May or June. 2 of those 3 are my friends. Being able to share something that I enjoy and something that I have a fun time doing with the people that I also enjoy playing Magic with is great, because when I'm talking with them and when I'm teaching them rules and policy, I can do it while playing Commander with them. I can do it while testing decks for Modern to see what's going to be good at this event. And then when I'm doing that, it helps. I can teach someone how to do a deck check while doing a deck check on their deck to make sure that they're going to be, better for the event tomorrow, making sure that their sleeves don't seem to, beat up or misshapen, making sure that nothing's bent. It helps me to prepare, it helps them to prepare, and it's just hanging out with my friends, which is a big part of why
many people
I
consider
enjoy
that
it.
fun.
Yeah, hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when you can just take that opportunity, or when I'm watching someone to make sure that I know how they do running an event, I can play in that event. Depending on what the store is like, depending on how that opportunity has come about, if I have a pretty high level of confidence in someone that they can run an event well, then I can just sit back and play Magic. Sure, I have to pay attention to what they're doing, but if I'm just gonna throw an F&M essentially, but have fun playing, maybe bring some jank deck that's probably not gonna win anyways, it's a great time because all I'm doing is something I enjoy.
Yeah. So that's point number 2, which is it's fun, and I'm gonna bring out point number 3.
Ooh.
This one might be a little bit more controversial. You don't hear people talking about.
Oh no!
So
controversy on our channel.
Maybe a little bit. So you don't hear people talking about this as much, but it is a great feeling to be a mentor to somebody. When I first started writing articles, that is the real, I think, turning point in my judge career, because before that, when I went to an event, I would like, do an event, and it would, maybe it was something to do for the weekend, and, maybe I would go to a SCG and then get to play, and that would like offset some of my costs. Or maybe, I would like go to some PTQ, because that's what they had back in those days. I'd go to some PTQ and it would be, kind of a fun time. But after I started writing articles, it was an entirely different thing. It's kind of, it's hard to describe to people how much satisfaction you can get out of going up to somebody who you've never met and saying, hey, I'm the guy who writes the Newsset Digest. And they're like, oh yeah, I've read those. Those are so cool. And like, it's great. It's one of the best feelings in the world. Certainly the best feeling in the program, I think, is somebody else seeing what you do and valuing it. And you get that feeling with mentorship. That is something you get with pretty much every mentor. Even if they don't say it, if you see somebody that you mentored improving in a skill that you help them with, that is that feeling put into actions.
Yep.
That's literally how that works. And it's, in my opinion, one of the most satisfying feelings that you can have. And it's something that you can only get if you do mentorship. So be sure to be a mentor to some people, and then you can have that feeling too.
Yeah, I'll throw out my moment. The first judge I made as a level 1 took that knowledge that I had, helped him to discover, and he used it to lead Magic tournaments at a summer camp for 9 weeks throughout the summer. Had, I want to say, over 200 children participate over the course of the summer, and that's what he was able to do because of that information I gave him. So just because I didn't directly influence the lives of those 200 children who had fun playing something at summer camp, I was a part of that because of what I did as a mentor.
Yep.
So that's really cool to see.
Yep. So that's all the points that I had prepared for why somebody would want to consider mentorship. It is a lot of work, and it is a lot of effort, and it's emotional investment too. If you're a mentor to somebody, you're putting part of yourself into them. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a Harry Potter Horcrux kind of a thing. Part of your soul goes into the person that you're mentoring, and so it is an investment, not just in time, but also in emotional. But
does that mean I just have like a part of you somewhere in here?
Yeah, and if I die, then I might need it back. So like,
oh no,
be prepared for that, I suppose.
Okay, sounds great. So, and with that, another important facet to understand about mentorship is it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
Maybe I just had a kid or something, and I'm gonna have to cut back on how many events I can do because I have a child now. I don't, but hypothetically speaking, like that would be probably a good reason to take some time away from judging. And if someone came up to me and said, hey Dalton, I'm really interested in becoming a judge, would you mind helping me? I can honestly and without guilt say, no, I can't. I have too much stuff going on to be able to provide a good learning environment for you.
Yeah.
And that's okay. No one's going to get mad at you if you need to take some time for yourself.
It's also okay if you say no for no reason.
Yes.
I mean, like, you're laughing, but like that's a serious thing. Like if someone comes up to me and they're like, hey Dave, can you mentor me? My first thought is probably not. I already have like a bunch of stuff going on in the program, but the better way to think about that is you're not saying no for no reason. You're saying no because you already have a bunch of other stuff and you want to focus the correct amount of attention to the other stuff. Mm-hmm. And here's another really important fact about the Judge program. Like Dalton said, it's like mostly volunteer-based organization. Mentorship is almost 100% a volunteer kind of a thing. With that being the case, I have in my life a certain amount of time blocked out for like judging and judging related stuff. And in order to have a strong work-life hobby balance, it's important that you set limits for yourself on how much of your free time and free resources you give away for free to the Judge program or to any of your other stuff that you're interested in. And so with that being the case, it could be that having a person mentoring directly underneath me would put me over that limit, and that's not good for Dave the person. And with those types of considerations, it certainly is justifiable to say to somebody, no, not right now. Here's some other people in your area who might be able to help you out, but I don't think I can do it right now.
And that's definitely something you can always offer, is say, hey, I don't have that ability right now, or I already have too much on my plate, but here's our regional coordinator, get in touch with them and they'll help you find someone. Or here's the website with the information that you need to study. Here's a judge in your area that you might be able to contact. I'll let you know. All of those have that ability to provide someone with the resources that they need to empower themselves.
Yep.
So definitely a big, if you can't do it yourself, which it's fine if you can't or don't want to do so yourself, still at least try to, provide those resources, because it will make a big difference for that person.
Yep. All right. So next topic, this segues pretty nicely into it, is let's say that I'm interested in getting a mentor.
Sure.
How can I do that?
You're interested in getting someone to mentor you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, this is a really interesting topic and a really important topic. Let's say, we've got one from the chat. Before we move on to the next topic, we'll talk about this from the chat. What does that look like to you? Likewise, sometimes my answer is, let's find out. Here's how I do mentorship. Does that work with you? And then plug them into things like Real Estate Tuesday. So yeah, that's a good point. If somebody asks you to mentor them, make sure you're on the same page about what they're doing, or what you would be doing to mentor them, because that's something that people often will do. They'll like come up to someone and say, hey, will you mentor me? And it's not clear to both parties what that should be looking like. And so, one person gets frustrated and the other person gets annoyed, and then it doesn't work out very well. So this is an important thing, and it kind of does dovetail nicely into the next topic that we brought up a little bit here. So a good point from the chat that it's important to set those things up, and
definitely having that out in the open is very important for you, because if I go up, I don't think I ever actually asked you about mentorship.
No.
It just kind of happened.
No.
So David and I just sort of were close to each other, physically.
Hey! Don't give away the secrets before we start talking about this topic here.
We were just in the same city, and we were both judges, and then we were like, hey, why don't we do this podcast or stream thing? We're like, yeah, that'd be a good idea. And then we just ended up together forming this, this topic, this product. However,
here's a secret, guys. That's what Dalton thinks happened. What I think happened is I saw a judge who I would like to work with and who had a lot of promise, and so I wanted to do some mentorship activities and help Dalton improve as a judge.
Which we'll get to later as well, because that's a fun one.
Then I asked him to do this Twitch broadcast that I had been thinking about doing and thought would be a great idea.
So the last, I think this was a Legacy Eternal Weekend qualifier, and I had someone come up to me and they said, hey, I'm interested in learning more about judging. What can you help me with? And I can say, hey, these are the resources that I have to offer. I don't have the ability to mentor you in person because you live an hour and a half away from me, so we can't do weekly meetups if that's what you're looking for. We can't do anything like that. I can't attend FNMs regularly because I'm sometimes out of town for larger events, or I'm busy because of my work. So those expectations I come out with right out the gate is, if you're looking for someone to talk to in person to hang out at FNM, that's not me. What I can do is I can show you these resources. I can answer questions on Facebook. I can send emails back and forth. But that's what you're getting out of me as a mentor.
Right.
If that doesn't work for you, I can probably try to find you someone else who can. I can put you in touch with our regional coordinator, who can get you in touch with the mentor lead for the region. I could put you in touch with a judge in your area that might be able to. What would you like me to do for you?
Right.
And that has definitely helped and has probably kept me from telling 2 people yes, but I'm okay with that because
of what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's important to like have a good work-life balance, and that's part of that is being able to limit your amount of time that you spend doing those types of things.
So the point you were getting to.
Yeah. So okay, what should I be doing if I want to get a mentor? And this isn't just directed towards people who are inexperienced judges, because like we talked about before, everybody in the program has stuff that they're really good at and stuff that they're not as good at.
Yep.
And this is something that I always recommend to people is if someone comes up to me and they're like, hey, Dave, I'd really like to improve at, and then they say some skill. What do you think I should do to help improve in that skill? And the advice that I give to literally everybody who asks me that question is the following. Find somebody in the judge program who's good at that skill and just talk to them about it. So that is something that is true whether you're an L1 who just passed his exam or whether you're an L3 who's just judged his 10,000th Grand Prix. Either way, if you have something that you personally would like to improve on, find someone who is good at that skill and get them to mentor you. So how do you do that? How do you get somebody to mentor you?
Yeah. So I think a really good example of this is if you're interested in going towards level 3, there's 9 things that
they're down to 9 now. It used to be 12 back in my day.
There are 9 specific facets of judging that they want you to look at and be able to really critique yourself on to figure out how you are doing in those 9 categories. So someone who's a level 2 who's interested in level 3 that wants to improve in one of those categories, this is that exact same scenario as the level 1 who says, hey, I feel comfortable with the jar. How do I get into competitive?
Yeah.
It
works the same way.
It works exactly the same way. And like David mentioned, you can find someone who personifies that, someone who you look up to, and you can say, oh, well, I was at this event. I was interested in learning a little bit more about competitive rules enforcement. This person was a team lead for an event, so chances are they can authorize hidden card error. They can talk about rewinds on games.
And they've done enough competitive rel that the TO trusts them to do that job.
Yeah, so
the head judge.
If I had to guess, they're probably pretty solid with competitive rules enforcement level questions. And being able to identify someone at an event and say, hey, do you have that ability to talk with me? Do you have that ability to give me some questions, some scenarios, something to work off of? And, hopefully it works for you. But just being able to bring up that question of, hey, what is available? What do you have to offer for me? Because once again, it might not be them. They might say, hey, I'm busy, but my friend David here is really good at this. Why don't you talk to them?
All right. So this is a really, this is a point where it's important to be empathetic, right? So let's say that I'm trying to improve in some skill, and I want Dalton to be my mentor, right? So if you want somebody to be your mentor,
Poor thing.
Well, we already talked about this, Dalton, about how everybody has something to offer.
Yes.
And, so if you want somebody to be your mentor, step 1 is you don't use the word mentor or mentorship when you're asking them. It's really scary. it's like if you want to go out on a date with somebody and the first thing you say to them is, will you marry me? Or I love you.
Yep.
Right? That's basically that's what we're trying to avoid. We don't want to come on too strong. So the way you really want to approach it is in a way that helps them understand how much it's going to be a good idea to do this for you.
Hey, what's your sign?
So just like when you're approaching somebody that you want to be friends with, and you don't say hey, you want to be best friends. You don't approach somebody who you want to mentor you and say, hey, will you be my mentor? What you do is you start with something small and simple that they can do for you. And the reason is because human nature is that they want to help people if it's convenient for them, right? I'll help you however you want as long as you make it convenient for me. If it's inconvenient for me, then I won't want to do it. So that's the mindset that a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, have when it comes to mentorship. So if you want somebody to be a mentor to you, try to like think about it and phrase it in these types of ways. So step one, you can come in with a hi, I'm interested in this topic, and you're pretty good at this topic. Would you mind, like, you know, if I like asked you a couple of questions about it? So you find them like on a tournament scene, or like somewhere in the, you know, maybe they're local to you, so maybe at an F&M.
Not during their break.
Yeah, not during their break. Not during their break. So yeah, you find something like some opportunity where they have like a few minutes of free time, and you're like, hey, you know, I'm interested in X topic. You know, I heard you were pretty good at X topic. You know, would you mind if I asked you a couple questions? Mm-hmm. So that's something that basically is always going to be a yes from almost every judge in almost most circumstances. Mm-hmm. So that's one that I like to use. It's simple and it's easy, and your goal isn't to get them to agree to be your mentor. Your goal is to get some information from them. Mm-hmm. And so maybe after that happens, you see them later on, or maybe you become Facebook friends with them. So after a while, you can, like, if you have any other types of questions, you can come up with them, and you can ask them, and that's what you want to do. And then after your like relationship with them as a mentor increases, they don't even realize that they're mentoring you, but like that's what's going on. And so that's what I think is the best way to approach, if you want somebody to be your mentor, how can I make that happen?
It's legitimately just like dating, but
yeah, I mean like that's,
but rules and policy oriented.
It's pretty much how it is. Like relationships in general is exactly the same, like fundamental ideas. So yeah, that's how I would recommend that you approach it.
Yeah, and sometimes you just like don't even know what's happening, and then bam, it's there. I remember having a conversation with you a while back. I believe you said someone brought up to you and they were like, "Hey, David, you know, why don't you mentor?" Like, I've never seen you. What was it like? I've never seen you mentor someone, or you haven't mentored
something
anyone
like
recently.
That,
yeah, something along those lines. And then David was like, "Huh." But I have Judging for the Win. I have this stream. I have this person that co-streams with me that I watch and try to teach.
You forgot the Newsset Digest articles, and also like the blog that I write, and also like all the conversations that I have with people at tournaments. But it turns out that almost all of my judging activities are related to mentorship.
Just because they don't have, you know, a level 1 or a level 0 by their side.
Yeah, following me around everywhere and like watching everything that I do.
Yeah, so sometimes you don't even realize it's happening. And, you know, whenever someone comes up to David and says, "Hey, you know, you're the person that does Judging for the Win. Oh, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate those Newsset Digests." Like, great, David's your mentor.
Yeah.
Like, not really, but like
on
really.
some level.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, and that's the thing we were talking about earlier. We had it brought up in the chat. It's like mentorship looks like different things. If a lot of people have like this one like idea in their head about like this one judge shadowing another judge, watching them do something and like, you know, pointing stuff out to them, and you know, yeah, that is mentorship, but that's not the only thing that it's possible for mentorship to look like. You know, you use your imagination. Like we said, anything that helps other judges develop in some area, that's mentorship. If something you do is helping another judge develop in some area, that's mentoring them. That's exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah. So one of the things that I feel like can be an issue with mentorship, and you know, I'd love to hear your opinions on this.
Okay.
Is it's important to get people actually judging.
Right.
You know, if I'm going to interview someone and I'm going to recommend them for advancement, I want to know how they do. So what are my options to provide someone an environment where they can fail and learn from it without sacrificing an event?
All right. So before I talk about this question, I want to like talk about a little bit of the broader context in it. Part of developing the skill is you start out at this level and your goal is to get up to this level.
Yes.
Right? So like that's like a spatial, a very crude spatial representation of what that looks like. So you start here and you need to be here. So it turns out that, let's say that here is the level that I need to be at in order to perform some task competently at a tournament.
Sure.
So I'm starting out here, and maybe by like studying by myself and thinking about it myself, I can get myself up to about this level. Mm-hmm. And then talking about it with another person could potentially get me all the way up to this level, but realistically it's probably only going to get me to about this level, right? This gap here represents about 80% or 20% of your skill competency on some arbitrary scale that doesn't exist.
But the Dave Hand scale.
Yeah, the Dave Hand scale. So the last 20% about is very much easier to get by experience rather than by someone talking to you about it or you studying it privately by yourself. Mm-hmm. So that is why this question is really important, because it's really this level that you should be looking at challenging yourself to do the task, even though this is the level that you need to be at in order to, perform this task competently. Mm-hmm. So that's why this is an important question, because the last 20% should be coming from personal experience rather than mentorship or talking about it with your friends or thinking about it yourself.
Yeah. So let's say we've gotten that person, they've had that time to look at the rules and read it.
Yeah,
they've had some discussion with us. But now it's time to get on the floor.
Yeah.
How do I provide them that 20% without, risking the event? If I have them in charge of the event, how do I ensure that they get that experience without risking, pairings never going up or slips not being turned in or someone making a wrong call?
Great question. So the way that you do that comes from our discussion about leadership. And so when we talked about, I think it was actually, we talked about this exact same topic in our talk about leadership. And when you are in a leadership position, which is the type of person who'd be making those types of decisions, mm-hmm. It's important for you to understand the capabilities of the people who you have at your disposal, mm-hmm. and B, what you can do as a leader to help develop those. Leadership and mentorship are very intimately connected in that way. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you need to do. You need to understand what the people who you're working with can do, and you need to be able to send them out when they're like 80% ready. And you also need to have a plan in place for if the 20% ends up mattering. So the plan in place could look like all kinds of things, and this is where it gets a little bit more specific to like what specific skill it is.
Yep.
So for example, let's say that my it's like a rulings thing, right? Let's say we're probably pretty close to get out there on the floor and like do some rulings. So before you do it by yourself, you should do it with some judge shadowing you. Mm-hmm. And it's important for the judge who's shadowing to make it as close as possible to the actual experience without with the obvious exception that you have somebody watching you do it and mm-hmm. Correcting you if you make some mistakes. So that's what you do. You shadow the person while they're doing whatever task it is. You keep an eye out, and you have a plan in place. For example, I'll intervene if I see him say something wrong, or if it looks like he's gonna issue a wrong ruling, then I'll step in. Or if it looks like the pairings aren't going to go up, then I'll be prepared to do it myself and talk to him about it during the round. So that's what you do. As a leader or as a mentor, you get them up to the 80%, and then you let them get the other 20% by themselves, but with a contingency plan for if the extra 20% ends up mattering.
So I had an experience with this. I want to say it was probably my second or third Comp REL event.
Okay.
A player had stolen a spell or stolen a creature with an ability.
All right.
And then cast Hostage Taker targeting that creature that had been stolen by the other person. And yes, thank you. So player A casts a mind control on some creature. They get control of it. Player B casts hostage taker to exile the thing that was mind controlled.
That used to be their creature. And then when, in response, so the thing got exiled, and then on the next turn, player A casts a removal spell on hostage taker, and it left the battlefield. And the call was, who gets the creature? Oh, yeah.
I had control of it, even though it was their own thing. Who does it go to? Because hostage taker doesn't say to its owner or to its controller. So that was the call. And myself, making a mistake, I said, hey, so because this is where the creature was when it was taken hostage, that's where it's going to go when hostage taker leaves the battlefield. And I was very lucky that I had another judge behind me. And they grabbed me, and I didn't even notice it, but they told the players, they said, hey, players, hold on a second. And then, they walked away with me, and they said, hey, so about that call, what gave control of that creature? I said, oh, well, it was the mind control. And they said, oh, well, when is mind control still there? And I said, no. So they said, who owned it? I go, oh, well, this player. And they go, when something returns to the battlefield and it doesn't say who does it go to? The owner. Oh, okay. And then I went back to the table, nice little walk of shame, and I said, hey, apologies, I got that wrong. Here's the correct ruling. And it was really hard to, just walk back and say, hey, I made a mistake, but this is how we're going to fix it. I can't believe I didn't catch it. My apologies. It was really hard, but I have never made that mistake again.
Yeah.
And the event didn't suffer because of it, because there was that judge there to help teach me. I couldn't actually even tell you who that judge was. I'm really glad that they were there, though.
Yep.
That was a rough day.
So
you and I had a great call, too.
It turns out that that's one of the reasons why the last 20% should be from personal experience. And the whole idea behind that is that failure is a healthy and living part of the learning process. And so you shouldn't expect to do everything perfectly, even though that's what people basically think should be happening for themselves a lot of the time. Yeah. In fact, failure and those types of things are an important part of the learning process. And if you're a mentor, it's important to it's really goes against your nature for most people to let someone do something that's wrong. But at the same time, it's a really great learning tool, and as long as it's not too disruptive to whatever the thing that they're trying to do is, you definitely should, as a mentor, that's part of good mentorship, continue to allow them those opportunities to learn from failure. That's probably not how they're going to think about it, but maybe a year down the road, maybe that's how they'll retroactively think about it. Yeah. And that's typically how it turns out. Personally, if you go to like any judge, they're probably going to have their own stories, like what Dalton just said.
Yep.
There was definitely some times like that. It'd be a long show if I talked about all of them, but definitely not as much in the rulings and policy thing. That's generally been one of my strengths, but certainly been like, for example, there's definitely been times where someone gave me a task to do, like putting up pairings or taking pairings down at the end of the round, and I like hard forgot to do it during one or two times, and I don't know what happened that caused me to forget, but it happened.
It happens.
Yeah, but like, it happens to everybody, and that's the thing. The way you learn about it, the best way you learn about it, is to do it wrong a couple of times, and then you learn about it, and then you're good. So that's very much part of the learning process.
Yeah.
So is there any other topics about mentorship that you wanted to discuss here before we sign off?
There's one more.
Yep.
And that is the interview process.
Okay.
And this is a little bit more specific towards advancement than mentorship, but it is something that comes up. And
we could do a whole episode about how to do a good interview.
Yeah, we could. So you have this candidate, they've passed the 2 events, they passed the test, but you do not believe that they are ready to become a level 1 judge.
Okay.
They just don't have the event logistics, and they passed the test, but there were some glaring, some things that they got wrong that really should have been right.
Okay.
And you just do not believe that they are ready to represent the program.
Sure.
Saying no can be hard.
Yep.
And like I said, this specifically goes towards the advancement interviews, but it definitely applies to other aspects of mentorship as well. Is the no, you didn't get it. You didn't understand this to the best of your ability, or I don't believe you're ready at this time. And it's really hard, but in those instances, it's very important to say no. If I do not believe that you will represent the program in a way that is good for the program or good for you personally, then even if you're my friend, even if we've gone back years, I have to say no. And that isn't always easy. Interviews like that and being able to talk to someone about the rules and the policy. If I'm asking David questions about rules and policy and it's a level 2, I'm like, hey, David, what's a missed trigger? That might raise some red flags in David's mind. And he might say, hold on a second, is this a joke? And when he finds out it's not, then we have some serious issues that probably need to be talked about. But that process is very important in advancement for ensuring that just because someone has done the minimum to become a judge doesn't mean that you don't want them to just be a minimum judge. You want them to be a good judge. You want them to be quality. You don't want them to be the judge that just barely scraped by. Because if I, as a level 2 judge, make a level 1 that just barely passed by, and on all of their applications, they put me as their mentor, and all of a sudden people are asking me, hey, Dalton, this person doesn't know what a missed trigger is. Why are they a judge? I'm going to have some splaining to do because I should have been a little bit more thorough in that process. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, one really important thing that I can give you some advice for. If you are so close to somebody that you don't feel comfortable telling them no in the case that they don't pass the interview, there's a really easy way to get, to do that. And the answer is you say to them, well, since we're such close friends, I think that it would be best if somebody else gave you the test and the interview. And that way, there won't be any doubt that someone's saying, hey, Dave just certified this guy because they're friends. Mm-hmm. And that generally fixes the problem pretty well. And if if you do have some concerns, then be sure to relay those to the person who is doing their interview so that they can be sure to, cover those concerns during that part. And it's just the same as getting a second opinion for a ruling if you're not sure about it. If you aren't sure about somebody's ability to do X judge skill to the level that the program might require them to do it, then you get a second opinion, and that is a pretty solid way to address those types of concerns.
Yeah, definitely. And don't be afraid to do so, or even talk to a tournament organizer or something. Just because they're not a judge, I can go to the tournament organizer and I can say, hey, this person ran the event this weekend. How did you think of their performance? And if the tournament organizer says, oh, well, they were great, I didn't notice anything, then maybe it's fine. Maybe you were holding them to a standard that might be too high.
Yeah.
Or
personally, I have issues with that too. As somebody who's known for being strong on rules and policy. If somebody misses any of the questions on a typical L1 exam, I tend to view that as kind of a mini red flag,
like an orange flag.
Yeah, I mean, but that's because I have really high standards for that sort of stuff, because obviously it's important to me, so therefore it should be important to everybody. That's the sort of thing. If you need some calibration in that type of a thing, you have to be able to recognize those types of biases in yourself. Yes. So one closing thought before we wrap everything up here, and it kind of ties back to our idea about like why mentorship is important, right? We talked about how it's fun. We talked about how it helps your skills out. It also helps the community in a really real way. So we joke all the time about the Fort Wayne dynasty, and there's all these really high quality, high level 2 judges that have come back or come out of Fort Wayne. And this isn't a judging thing. It's not just judging where this happened. For example, like I believe the village that Maria Sharapova was from came out with a bunch of really high level, high quality tennis athletes. And how could such a thing happen? And it's because of mentorship. The reason is because of mentorship. Mentorship doesn't help you. It doesn't help other people. It doesn't help just other people. It helps the community as a whole. And the Fort Wayne judge community is as strong as it is because of mentorship, and because of the fact that if I have some question about something, I've Patrick and Dalton and all these other really excellent judges who are just like a Facebook message away or an F&M away. Mm-hmm. If anybody has any questions or concerns about stuff, those types of really close relationships, close meaning physically close even, that fosters improvement for everybody, because everybody can take advantage of the skill and the availability that really good foundations can provide. And the really good foundations have good mentorship to build the next floor and the next floor and the next floor, and you've got a skyscraper after a while. So
a dynasty.
Yeah, or a dynasty. So that's it. So that's the secret, I think, to the Fort Wayne area thing, and certainly other judges, other geographic areas that have lots of high quality judges, have said the same thing to me when I talked to them about that in events. So mentorship, super important topic. Hope everybody has an awesome time, with the mentors in their judge career. And hey, if you thought about a specific person when you were looking at this video, someone who's maybe had a real big impact, go ahead and reach out to them and say, hey, I really appreciate it, because as a mentor myself, that's one of the best feelings that you can have is other people seeing the work that you do and appreciating it.
Definitely let them know, because it'll
brighten their day.
It'll make their day.
Sure thing. All right, have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you next time.